And welcome to another edition of the Counseling Experience, coming to you live at the 100.3 studio. And I am trying to get this microphone all set up so that I can speak into it without a lot of hassle. And here we go. So today we're going to talk about spring cleaning your relationship. And the whole idea behind spring cleaning a relationship is take a moment, pause, and get a feel for where you're at with the people that are around you. It might be a relationship with your peers, your buddy, might be you have a favorite lady friend, might be you have a spouse, kids, and maybe take each of those groups one at a time, not even on the same day because you might need some time, but really work through some relationship issues and see where the relationship stands, see what's wonderful, see what's not working so well, and just take stock. Take stock in your relationship. I know we do that with our banking. We balance our checkbooks. Some of us do. We're going to talk a little bit about that on another show, the intimate spending plan. But if you really want to know how your relationships are, you have to do this thing. And I'm going to talk with you about that in just a moment. And just by way of introduction, this is, again, Dr. Matt Eschler with a Southern Utah Counseling Experience, also merged recently with St. George Center for Couples and Families. And the St. George Center for Couples and Families has a full range of therapists with different expertise. We've got a bunch of us there. We've got one that really focuses on trauma, one that focuses on anxiety, mood disorders. I'm a marriage counselor by trade. I work with high conflict marriages and help people smooth out those rough edges so that they can stop talking about divorce and get on with the business of being in love. We've got another expert in there that works with some of the autism spectrum and is just super, super genius at helping people with their kind of just with their issues, with their problems, helping them come to grips with some reality, come to grips with some direction. And he works there out of my office. We also have some substance abuse counselors. If you've got some issues with drugs and alcohol or one or the other or both, he can help you with that, and any kind of domestic violence issues that is court-ordered, we can help with that. So thinking about that, we've got, again, a St. George Center for Families. We're up on Black Ridge Drive, and very confidential, secluded setting that is set up completely for your comfort to come on in and get some help with what ails you. What I do is a radio show each week to give you just a little sketch of what you might want to do. And what I hope is that you're able to do this stuff that I hand to you, these tools. I'm hoping you're able to use them, and it smooths out your relationship. I hope you use them, and it literally takes your relationship up a notch. So if you're like miserable, it'll take you up to kind of happy. And if you're kind of happy, it'll take you up to happy. And then we just keep moving to just cartwheel excited about our marriages and relationships and our friends, our friendships. So that's the idea, that you get a free tool or two every week. And then what I hope is that if it doesn't work out and the tool is maybe giving you some thoughts and ideas, but it doesn't quite pull together and work with your lover or with your buddy, then you come on in and see me and I'll help you tune it up. I'll help you smooth out those rough edges, because every once in a while you need to borrow someone else's eyes. You need to look at your relationship through my eyes is one way to get more clear of a view of how your relationship looks. You guys might be too mixed up, too close to the source, and I can kind of step back and give you like a helicopter view and help you clear up some things, and I can catch things as they happen and help you guys work with maybe a different way of doing them. Does that make sense? And that's what we hope to do. So there you have it. And then today we're going to talk about specifically spring cleaning your relationship. And a bunch of years ago, like how many years? Man, it's been at least, 35? So it's been, my wife just looked at me like 35, maybe 20 years ago, you're 35. All right, so I'm in my 50s. So 30 years ago, 32, 33 years ago, I was on an LDS mission, okay? And so during this time of service in my LDS mission, we were commanded or instructed to do this thing called companionship inventory. And I hated it. I literally hated it because it was a once a week sit down with your missionary companion and talk about what was working and what wasn't working and give each other critical feedback. And I thought that was the worst. I didn't want critical feedback from anybody. And part of getting this critical feedback is it's vulnerable. It makes you feel vulnerable. It makes you feel vulnerable to give it as well. Part of it was painful. Part of it was kind of felt good because there were some positives. But I just, for some reason, pushed it away. And I realize now, after watching a lot of couples, that companionship inventory that we were instructed to do literally saves marriages. It literally does. And I got to say, even today, even right now at this wonderful age of 52, I still have a tough time sitting down with my wife and doing companionship inventory. I still have this knee-jerk, it's going to hurt, she's going to tell me stuff I'm doing wrong, and I'm not going to enjoy that. And then what I hope I do is either she sets me straight and helps me understand that it's really a good thing, or I remember that anyone that's an expert in anything really has a solid purpose in mind, goes to work and practices more than anyone else, and wants constant critical feedback. Those are three really key points to being an expert. And if I want to be an expert husband, well, I've got to have a purpose for being a husband. And I want you to write that down. Have a purpose for being a husband. Or if you're a wife, have a purpose for being a wife. If you're somebody's son, if you're somebody's best friend, if you're somebody's lover, have a purpose for being that husband, wife, friend, kid, whatever you are, whatever relationship you're assessing, have a purpose for it. Number two, work at it. You can't just, you know what I thought? I thought, I'm going to catch Chris, I'm going to marry her, and then everything's uphill, downhill, not uphill. Wow, I said that. Everything's just smooth sailing because we got married, and that's the goal. And then what I realized after some time is that you have to put time into your marriage. You have to put time into relationships. See, there's literally nothing more painful than a time-starved relationship. So have a purpose for your relationship. Number two, put in time and effort. Put in practice. Practice being a husband. Like if your wife says that she really, really relaxes and is more in the mood for intimacy if someone helps her do the dishes and mop the floors and get the kids to bed, practice doing those things. Practice doing them without being asked. And if you're me, practice doing them without looking for a compliment for doing them. Because that's what I like. I like words of affirmation, so I'll do something nice and then I'll look at her like, all right, say something nice. And you got to kind of hedge away from that and just do it out of the goodness of your heart. And that's called practicing being a good husband. And then the third thing, again, is constant critical feedback. Because if you're not getting feedback, you're not eroding those rough edges off of yourself. You're not getting better. And you know how it is. If you look at yourself, you sometimes are way too hard on yourself. Other times you're way too soft on yourself. Other things are out of your awareness completely. And so you need another set of eyeballs. And all of the best in everything, Michael Jordan of basketball, the greatest football players ever, the greatest golfers ever, hockey players ever, they all had this one thing in common, is they craved feedback. They wanted it. And so I've got to really start looking at these companionship inventories as a place to get constant critical feedback and really let that knock the rough edges off of me. Let that hone me into being that perfect, fine-tuned husband that I ought to be. Does that make sense? And so today what we're talking about is that kind of a thing, that companionship inventory with those different relationships that you have out there. And really one of the first steps of bringing your relationship out of maybe a slumber, if it isn't a slumber, or to take it up a notch to something really awesome, would be well, I've got eight steps to share with you, but the first one would be to really I'm going to label it, take a walk down memory lane, like really think back at the very beginning in its brand new form. What was the relationship like? What was What gave you that juice to chase after that person? What made you stick around after that first date or after that first setting together? And I'm going to focus mostly on relationships, on marriage relationships. And you can apply this to any relationship, but think about when you first started dating your spouse. Now, I know there's people out there that will say to me that, like, it was never good. I kind of just went out with him, and then I went out with him again, and then everybody pretty much labeled us as being together, and next thing I know, I'm married with 3 kids with him, and I've never really loved him. I want you to go back and find some reason, because I really can promise that there was something somewhere that kept you there. There was some little skill set or strength or something that was attractive to even get that person in the front door. And so I want you to consider that. Now, those of you that had relatively healthy or even healthy beginnings, go back and really think about it. Like I go back to when I first met Chris. Well, we were 14 at the time, I believe, something like that. We were really young in Meldrum's class, and all I did was like flirt with her, and she ignored me. So that part's not real good. And I spent the next, 6 years flirting with her and her ignoring me. And I get home from traveling abroad, and I'm out there, and her sister shows up with her, and we go to a fireworks show together. And I had the best time at that fireworks show. Like, we watched fireworks. I don't even remember the fireworks. I just remember that all she wanted to do was make out with me the whole time, and I was trying to say, no, let's get to know each other first. I'm joking. That didn't happen. But the whole point of it is we had a really good time. And then we went out a couple more times, and then she let me know that she was engaged to somebody, and I thought, well, that's okay, because then what I said to her, I said, look, all I want is a girlfriend for the summer, and you're engaged to a guy that is gone for the summer because he was doing some strange thing, and so he's gone, and I'm there, and so she says, yeah, I'll have a boyfriend for the summer. And I'm thinking, cool, because now I don't have to worry about date nights. I've got a steady date because I've got a girlfriend, and I don't have to worry about getting married because I'm young. I'm only 21 years old, and I've got a summer where I can, maybe get her to kiss me, maybe whatever, and then I can head on up to Salt Lake and start my career and leave her here, and I can be kind of unencumbered. All of these thoughts hit a 21-year-old's mind, by the way, and I'll hit Salt Lake and start dating somebody up there. And so summer goes on, and somewhere in the middle of the summer, I fell in love deep with her. And somewhere in that summer, I talked her into taking her engagement ring off and breaking up with the guy she was engaged with, because it was awkward getting serious with a person that's engaged to someone else. And that's all just really kind of cool, fun memories. And sometimes we tease each other about it. Sometimes she tells me that I'm up in the night, that isn't how it really happened. And I remind her that it's exactly how it really happened. And it's just sometimes when relationships get into like a rut or a slumber, it's good to just clear out some of those cobwebs and remember some of the fun little things that you went through together at the very, very beginning. And a lot of times at that very beginning, you did a lot of stuff right. Like, you didn't time starve. I did not time starve my relationship at the beginning, for sure. Like, if she got off work at 2 a.m, I'd be at her work at 2 a.m. If I was hot and sweaty out building houses at noon and thirsty, she'd bring me a drink, and I think she really just liked to look at me with my shirt off, but she would bring me a drink, and it would be kind of nice because I'd take a little break and have a drink of ice water. She didn't quite bring herself to bring me a Pepsi like I wanted, but she did bring ice water because that's healthy for me, and that was just awesome. Those are cool little memories that pull couples together when they head down the road and it feels maybe a little stagnant. It feels like the relationship's falling a little bit asleep. And as you wake it up, you remember the reasons that you fell. You remember the reasons that you were drawn to each other. And if you do that every now and again and just think of another little memory, another little thing, and talk with each other about it, laugh about it, and put some time and effort into your relationship around that arena, I think it'll reward you. It'll be well worth it. All right, so that's number one, step number one. Number two, one of the things that couples do a ton of when they first get married is they check in. How am I doing? Hey, how was that date the other night? Did you enjoy that? What do you like to do? What do you really, really, really want to do? And you care. And you work at wowing each other. And you work at wooing each other. I always wanted to say woo on the radio. I don't even know if woo is a real word, but you know what I'm talking about. You want to check in with each other there at the beginning because you're trying to get to know what the other one likes. And then something really strange happens during the course of a relationship. Here's what I think happens. I think couples in many, many cases start to know who the other one is, and they decide they don't need to ask anymore. I don't need to be curious any longer because I know what that facial expression is. I know what that movement around the kitchen is. I know what it means when you do that. And so we start judging each other based upon history, which is often can be correct. But what if they change? What if it's different? What if it's something else and you don't check in? So getting back to checking in right now, this spring, 2018, think of your closest relationship. Think of your spouse, your lover, the person that you're with the most. Do you check in enough? Do you refuse to let your conversations get tossed out the window because you're too busy with other people's conversations? Do you let your kids interrupt to the point where it's just impossible to have a real serious, intimate conversation? Like two things that I hear a ton of. One's a brand new dilemma for this new generation that's coming into the marriage age. But the number one dilemma that's been around for centuries, I'm assuming, is parents that don't teach their kids that they need private time together without them. There's so many parents out there that are so caught up in believing that if I don't respond to every one of my kids' calls, texts, yells, knocks at the door, then I will damage my kid for life. They'll think I hate him, and I'll lose him forever to the drug world and the ISIS gang and Hurricane. But see, really, it's actually really healthy for a kid to know that there's a boundary there, that this is mom and dad's time to talk. We need an hour. You're not to disturb us. Or this is mom and dad's date night. Our cell phones are turned off and in the glove box of the car. And you know, almost every one of you parents were parented by parents, or if you're my age, you parented without cell phone technology. Like Chris and I, at the first of our marriage, we would go out on dates and our kids would have to, if they really needed us, they would have to call the movie theater that we were at, or call the casino that we were at because of Chris's gambling problem. I'm totally joking. Chris does not have a gambling problem. But the point is our kids would have to track us down that way. And they never did because they just knew we were gone. We were gone for 4 or 5 hours. And it should be that you, as parents, take a break and clear your head without having the door knocked on. I've got moms out there that don't even go to the bathroom without their kids walking in on them and asking them a question. See, there's certain times, one is your couples counsel when you're talking with your spouse, and the other is when you're in the bathroom, that your kids need to learn to be independent. That's a great little tool for a 5-year-old to learn, that you have to be a little bit independent while I go potty, because that's dad's time now. Or mom and dad are talking for an hour. You can do these 3 things, but that's it. And don't knock on the door, or, you know, we're not going to do anything harsh, but we're just going to tell you to knock it off. Get it? So the whole idea is that teach your kids to have, that you have time that they're not involved in, so that they can learn to be a little bit less narcissistic in feeling the world revolves around them, and they can be a little bit more understanding that there's boundaries to be honored. The second one is almost taken over as the biggest issue in marriage relationships. And I want you to think about this as I tell you what it is. And you probably already are thinking you know what it is, and you're probably right. It's one of the biggest problems in marriage relationships right now, and that's cell phones. I had a couple in today. It was just, they were just laughing at each other, and then we all started talking about how sad it was, but they were both sitting on the couch for 3.5 hours playing Words with Friends, but not with each other. They were playing with people out in the community that they were friends with. They had a block of time that they could have hung out with each other, and they were both on their phones, totally engaged, totally relaxing, enjoying their evening, and they realized that they completely starved their marriage relationship that entire time. Now, I can come home from work and have just 3 quick emails to send. That's it, just 3 quick emails. And Chris will say, okay, and that's say it's 5:45 in the evening, and now it's 8:45, and I'm done with those emails, and I've ate my dinner with one hand while finishing up the last email with the other hand. And what I've done is the same thing as the Words with Friends couple. I've blown a whole evening of starving my relationship of time because I needed to do just 3 little things quick on the internet. See, and that's what the internet's done. That's what cell phones have done, iPads have done. They've made it way too easy to work 24/7 or to play 24/7 with other people and not the people that you're with. How many times have you walked through a restaurant and looked at a table of people all on their cell phone texting someone else while out as a group date with a group of people? They're out there right in a prime position to chat with each other, but they're all chatting with somebody in other restaurants, and those people in other restaurants are with people chatting with them, and no one's connecting face-to-face anymore. And so if you time starve your relationship because you're distracted by your kids or if you're distracted by your phones, it is going to catch up with you. So get back to checking in with each other. Get back with having conversations. If one of you asks the other one a question or your opinion on something, don't jump on your phone and Google search it to give them the exact answer. Talk with them back and forth. Talk with them about imagine if you're thinking about a vacation to the Bahamas and you say, what's the weather like in the Bahamas in May? Do you think it's nice? Do you think it's warm? What if it's really warm? What if it rains? What would we do? Okay, so the question is, what if it rains in May in the Bahamas and we're there? What do we do? That's a conversation that could be had. You guys could talk about a million things that you would love to do in a rainstorm, which is, by the way, husbands, handy data, because when it rains and your wife's gave you cute little things that she'd like to do in the rain, now's your chance. But what a person will do in our day and age is they'll Google search the weather in the Bahamas in May and they'll give you an exact answer and then the conversation's over. So what if you left your phones off and you just fantasized and chatted like we used to? And I get it. We're now in the 21st century. Maybe we're in the 22nd century. I don't know what it is. But anyway, we're in a different century. I get that. And so our problem is we have to learn to adapt this technology in and still have relationships. And so checking in on, are we starving each other or are we giving each other enough attention? And then be willing to reprioritize if the relationship check-in tells you you must. Don't argue. Okay, my wife's here, and so this is awkward because I do these things wrong sometimes. And I'm hoping sometimes I do them right too. But here's the deal. If your wife tells you that you're not giving her enough attention, don't with a serious face look at her and say, are you kidding me? Of course I am. Because if she doesn't feel it, then you're not doing it. So there's 2 options. Either you're giving her the wrong attention or you're giving her not enough attention. And I'm telling you, like for years, decades, I thought slapping my wife's butt when she walked by me was really positive attention. That would buy me another couple of hours of doing whatever I wanted to do. And I thought we had this working agreement that was cool, kind of like cute and flirty. And it really, to her, wasn't. To her, it was like lewd. It was like, don't hit my butt every time I walk by. So it wasn't working. And so I was literally starving our relationship because that took money out of the relationship bank instead of putting money in the relationship bank. So you got to check in with each other more than every 6 years. You got to check in with each other more than every 19 years. I would suggest you literally check in with each other every night and then once a week check in for a long check-in. I don't do this well, but I need to. I do this in spurts, and maybe that's like some of you. So you need to do this well, especially in this day and age. Check in nightly, just a 5-10 minute check-in. And then once a week, sit with each other. And there's 2 things. The Rackmans are fantastic people. There's 2 things that I want you to do in this check-in, this longer check-in. I want you to ask for really clear and specific feedback. Clear, specific, critical feedback. And then I'd also like you to tell each other exactly what you're loving, what is like absolutely working for you. And so as you go into that meeting, I want you to have thought the last 7 days to catch your spouse doing something that you love so that you can take it to that meeting. Do you see what that does? That means you're looking for positive through the week. And then if something's kind of bothering you or something's hurt your feelings, bring that in and give some critical feedback, because you know that they'll change slowly over time. There's another thing that you can do. This is point number 3. Another thing that you can do. This one's tough. This one's one that has some little minefields in it that you got to watch out for. What humans do with trauma or with pain is they either make sense of it, find meaning for it, and then grow from it, or they bury it, stuff it deep in there somewhere, and then it floats to the surface every now and again and comes out in a fight. So I want you to think about that. There's really just those two trajectories with pain and trauma. So if you've been hurt by your spouse, or you've been hurt by an ex-spouse and you're in a new relationship, or you've been hurt in your childhood, or you've been hurt last week, you're either going to make sense of it, create some meaning for the pain, and grow from it to become a better person because of it, or you're going to stuff it, bury it deep, and it'll float to the surface and come out in a fight sometime, or sometimes plural. And I'd way rather you find meaning for it. Now, I'm not suggesting that you should love pain and adversity because you always grow and get better. What I'm saying is that you are going to have pain and adversity, so you may as well get better. Does that make sense, the difference? Don't go out looking for pain. Don't go out and create self-inflicted pain. Like, I shouldn't start a really good heroin addiction so that I can break myself and kick the addiction just so I can prove how strong I am and grow from that adversity. That'd be ridiculous. But if I'm feeling some core pain because of someone or because of my relationship, it's really good to put it out on the table in front of you and your spouse or your partner and talk about it, make sense of it, create meaning for it, a new agreement about it, and move forward happy and better than you were. And I know I'm oversimplifying, but I'd really love for you to keep it that simple. Talk openly about what traumatized you, what pained you, what you felt was a wrong that was committed. Understand your partner's point of view clearly. Create healthy meaning for the adversity. If let's say that if a certain husband just swears at his wife and tells her that he hates her and that he wants nothing to do with her and he's just sick of the marriage. And later on, under more cool heads, he apologizes. He says, "Oh, I said some things I shouldn't have said. I'm really sorry. I want to be with you. I love you." She says, "I love you," and they're together, but she feels that pain of not being able to unhear those words. So in their next couples counsel, she should put that out on the coffee table in front of him, just kind of imaginarily, and I don't even know if imaginarily is a word, but you know what I'm talking about. Just put it out there and say, "Look, you said some words in our fight the other day and they've affected me, and I feel my sense of self has went down a little bit. I'm not sure how I feel about you and your love for me and your commitment and dedication, and it really, I can't unhear those words. I need your help with this." And then he could explain that like those words just come natural because of kind of how he processes and how he does things at work and how he's done stuff through his, and he's really trying to not curse like that. And next thing you know, she might give it some meaning that, okay, so this is part of your, the way you communicate poorly, where you don't have the words to use, so you use those really horrible words, and they just express strong emotion, and so you were just sharing some strong emotion with me, and sometimes that strong emotion comes from a place of pain, and pain covered by anger flies out of your mouth with those words, and so it's more your problem than really aimed at my problem. Now, I'm not saying you justify that it's okay that he curses at you, but what I'm saying is that when you two are going to work it out, you have to find some meaning for it and really understand and make a new agreement. So the new agreement now is that he's going to really double down on his effort of using positive words of affirmation. He's really going to go overboard on sharing words of love and words of positive and positive emotion, and he's going to really kind of flood her with that to where she literally washes those naughty words out of her head. And so now they've got a new meaning. They've grown in the adversity, and that's a crazy dumb example, but I think that's the best one I could do in half a second of preparation there. And so that's what I want you to do, is look for those hidden resentments that are just waiting to fly out of your mouth in a fight, and get them out there when it's calm and peaceful, and solve them with an agreement. Okay? You know what? One of the things that harms relationships, and this is, there's a research out there that a lot of marriages end in 5, 6, and 7, right in there, those years, the 5th, 6th, or 7th year. And then a whole other batch of them end in about the 19th year. And the 5th, 6th, and 7th year, one of the things that ruins communication and that then destroys the relationship is these assumptions that we make about the other. And so I want you to picture, if you've got kind of a negative sentiment towards your spouse, and you've decided that they are kind of angry or mean, or you've just made some decisions and assumptions, and so whatever they say, you assume it's coming from that place that's not fun for you. And a lot of couples get caught up in speaking for each other. Like, I know what that means. I know what you were doing on Friday. I know that you just disrespect me all the time. You don't even like me. You don't even like me. And do you understand that when you say to someone, you don't like me, they have a choice. They can argue with you. Yes, I do. And now you're fighting, which is silly, right? Or they can be quiet and let you think that, or they can confirm it. There's really no good response to a blaming, assuming statement. But what if you looked at him and said, I got a feeling that I'm not real loved by you. Is that true? Or am I just reading this wrong? And the whole idea about that, the whole idea is give them a chance to tell you how they feel. Now, I know you're out there saying this. I get it. What if they won't tell the truth? Then it's not going to work. They have to tell the truth. And I know that's hard. I get it. I get that it's hard to be completely transparent and honest. But why not take some time here and just work towards that? Why not erode away the need to not be vulnerable? Why don't you erode away the need to be a little bit closed and protected and guarded because you feel like you're the Lone Ranger, and start stepping out into the world of being vulnerable and being open and transparent. And it's probably one of the hardest things in a relationship you'll ever do. It's probably one of the hardest things in your relationship that you'll ever do is become transparent with people. And so when you are transparent, you're vulnerable, and so's the person that you're with. And if you're willing to do that, then more often than not, the person that you're with will start being vulnerable with you. And that makes for a really good relationship. And really, in that 7th year, what destroys a lot of relationships is that they've evolved away from that dating experience. Revolved away from that dating experience where you're really curious about how the other one thinks. You really want to know what they like and dislike because you're assessing. Like, wouldn't it be awful to date a girl that wouldn't go to a Motley Crue concert? Like, I only dated girls that love Motley Crue because what would I do if they wanted to go to like a Chicago concert, for heaven's sake? That would be nasty awful. So you're curious and you wonder, and you don't do a lot of judging other than you judge, okay, is that going to be good? Are we going to be good together? And then all of a sudden about year 5 and 6, you start to think you know everything about them, so you stop checking in and you stop talking, and you start assuming that you know, and you start making these assumptions that you're better at them than they are at them. And you literally jump on their side of the street and you start working both sides. Like, you start working their side of the street by telling them how they're feeling. And then you work your side of the street by telling how you feel about how they feel, and they don't even have to participate, but they probably will. They'll start yelling back, I don't feel that way. Now you're fighting. And I see couples literally fight while they're agreeing with each other because they didn't get to say it themselves. Does that make sense? And the hope is that you'll literally go back to that beginning stage and ask questions. Ask those questions. Ask if the other person's happy with you. And remember the big three. Have a solid purpose for your relationship or for this discussion. Number 2, practice. Do these discussions over and over again until you're good at them. And 3, this is the big one, crave constant critical feedback. Crave it. If you're not getting feedback, it's because maybe they don't dare give it to you, or maybe you've not been humble enough. You've been too much in your ego, too much pride. And what I'd like you to do is step out of that and step back and say, look, I want the feedback. I want to get better. And even though it might hurt, might feel like a punch in the gut for a minute, it's going to make me a better person, and I'm going to sand down some of those rough edges and become a strong, solid partner in this relationship. And so you've got to check your assumptions at the door, and you've got to really ask those questions. And I know there's a person out there thinking this, but I do ask, and it's confirmed that I was right. Well, it's still really good for them to be able to participate in the conversation and say it, even if you're right. Some of you guys have such control issues. It's so awesome. So drop all the control issues, let go of your assumptions, and literally ask the question. I have other people tell me, but it's going to take way too long. And I go, yeah, it's much easier to run a dictatorship where you just control both sides of the relationship and make it perfect. But that's not the plan. The plan is for both of you to participate and to use your skills and weaknesses together. Hopefully you've got some weaknesses and they've got some skills to help build you, and you've got some weaknesses and they've got some skills to build you. And then it all works out perfect because you then leave this life better because of it. Makes sense, right? There's something else that goes wrong. Now, remember I mentioned there's 2 really popular years for divorce in long-term marriages and short-term. So 5, 6, 7 years right in there, people divorce. And then those that make it through that kind of get back going again. And then it's about year 19. A lot of divorce happens again. They're just statistically. And it's not like don't think this is a firm thing that you have to comply with. It's just statistically about year 5 or 7 right in there. A whole flux of divorces occur in about year 19 again. And that's not just in our continent, a couple of continents. The idea is that couples by about year 19 lose connection with each other. And those of you that have been married 14, 15, 16 years, take a quick gut check on, are you still connecting with each other? When you had a really good experience and did a belly laugh, like a really funny belly laugh, was it with one of your kids, one of your buddies, or was it with your spouse? When was the last time you had a really happy, fun experience that created a whole memory that you could fall back on now and again and think about? If it's been a long time, then you got to get on that. And I'm going to give you a guideline. This is just a guideline. This is just a statistical guideline that if couples do this, they're more likely to maintain a connection and a loving, long-lasting, eternal even marriage. Okay? Here's the guideline. Every single week, a family night. Okay? Some people in Utah think that's a Mormon thing. It's not a Mormon thing. It's a human being thing that every week the family needs to have a dedicated evening where they shut the world out and just focus on each other as a family and build that family experience. Every week, and by the way, that strengthens a mom and dad if they're partners in it. Don't have the mom just run the family night and the dad show up, or the dad run it, mom just show up. Run it together. It's how you learn to partner together. It's how you learn to work together. It's how you learn to negotiate together. And believe it or not, there's couples that never learn to negotiate. They just are sneaky and get their way with each other. So negotiate with this, all right? That's number 1. Number 2, date night. This is a night where you do not talk about problems, okay? How many times when you're first dating, now I know some of you would do this, do you go out on the date and it's maybe a second date and you talk about your bowel issue? No, you go out and impress her. You open the door for her. You allow him to open the door for you. You are doting on each other. You're wooing each other. Do that for your entire married life. Go out on a date night. Put your phones in the glove box. Don't answer them for anybody. Your kids will be fine. And it's like, it's not, it's what? It's a 5-hour date. You head out. And by the way, you need to do a 5-hour date once a week. And I know some of you are cringing. What are we going to do for 5 hours? Or what are we going to fit 5 hours in? Well, if you can't find 5 hours for your marriage, why are you married? Like, put time into it. Get yourself 5 hours. Stop doing something else for 5 hours a week and devote it to your marriage. Devote it to your spouse. So take that 5 hours, go to dinner. And that's a little bit more of a public place. Take that 5 hours and I'm being told to put it on the camera, and I thought I was on the camera, but anyway, I'm gonna have to just keep going. Take that 5 hours, and after you go to dinner, then I want you to maybe avoid a movie because you can't really do anything unless you just make out during the movie, you know. But go on a hike. Take some of that 5 hours and go window shopping at the mall if it's raining. Take that 5 hours and go for a drive and look at the fancy homes up in Stonecliff. Take that 5 hours and go sneak into the swimming pool at the Marriott over there. And Marriott's hard to break into. The Crystal Inn's a little easier. Russ is going to kill me for saying that. The whole point is that do something interesting for 5 hours. That's what you used to do when you're first dating. Like, you wouldn't do a 45-minute date when you're first dating. Mating. I'm sorry. When you're first dating, you would never, let's go to Chili's real quick and just get fries and a drink so we can get home quick. That's not how you dated when you were connecting. So after 15 years, if you're dating that way, stop it. So that's number 3. Number 1, this is the guide to maintain that connection, that happy memory marriage connection. Family night every week. Date night for at least 5 hours every week. Couples counsel for a couple of hours every week. Every single week. Does that make sense? What I'd like you to do after you do that couples counsel every single week, I'd like you to plan in that couples counsel a 3-day weekend every quarter. Every single quarter of the year, a 3-day weekend. I know money's going to be a problem, so you might just go camping. You got to eat anyway. You might just go pitch a tent in your backyard and tell your kids to watch movies because you're going to camp with your husband in the backyard or your wife in the backyard. You might save money for 3 months and just put a little bit aside and go do something for a 3-day weekend. But do a 3-day weekend every quarter, just the two of you, no kids. Every year, take at least a vacation with just your spouse. Do another one with your kids if you can, or do every other year. But somehow or another, get out on a vacation, just you and your spouse, every year. Don't lose that connection. And don't blame connection loss on your kids. So many people say, well, we can't, we've got kids. People do stuff with kids, by the way. They do stuff with each other and leave their kids to fend for themselves with a babysitter. I promise there's babysitters that will not eat your young. I promise. You just got to find them. Put in some effort and find them. Get a 3-day weekend. Dare leave your kids. You were left alone, I promise you. All of you were dropped on your head once too, and it was probably okay. I'm not advocating drop your kids on their head or just abuse them. What I'm advocating is let them grow up a little bit, a year at a time, by being without you and learning to negotiate with a new caregiver for a weekend. So you create happy memories in the same old marriage. What'll happen is about year 19, you'll look at your marriage and you look at yourselves and you'll say, dang, we've got this pretty good. And you'll all of a sudden feel validated. You'll feel like, man, I like this. You'll have the marriage that your teenage kids would want to be in, so they won't say things to me like, I'm not going to get married ever. You see my parents? They got a terrible marriage. They hate each other. You don't want that. You want a marriage that your kids would want to have. Does that make sense? I got one more for you. Spring cleaning, right? You remember that's what we're talking about. One more. This one is easy if you get in the habit, but really hard if you've kind of broken the habit or gotten out of the habit. this whole idea of gratitude, that's what I'm going to call it, gratitude, being thankful, and sharing with your lover that you're grateful for this or for that or for them as a person. Here's the statistics, and I'm not a big stat person, I'm not a numbers person, but this is what one research scientist around marriages did. He did a 30-year study on marriages, and what he found was that marriages that were super marriages, like really hero marriages, complemented each other 19 times. 19 times for every criticism that they found. Think about that. We want constant critical feedback. We want to get better. But think how awesome it would be that your spouse was looking for those 19 or 20, 18, 19, 20 compliments and things to be grateful for at the same time. And what I want to suggest to you is that the minimum amount of compliments and being grateful for each other is 5. The minimum. If you're doing less than 5 for every critical comment that you make, your marriage is probably going to disconnect, and it's going to be one of those flatline roommate ones. It'll be a divorce. It'll be a lateral fight to see who just wins the last fight to kind of keep alive. What we really want is we want a marriage that's awesome. We want cartwheels. We want rainbows. We want the fantasy. We want the marriage that is intimate well into our hundreds. We don't want one that's just flatlined. And so think about how easy it would be to just search out 5 things to be grateful for every time you had a complaint. Oh, my spouse, I can't believe he or she's doing that. But here's 5 things I really adore. Here's the cutest 5 things that I can imagine. Here's the 5 things that make me giggle just a little bit inside. And yeah, I'm a guy that said giggle. Ugh, figure that out. Point of that is that you can literally find joy in the search. And then when you share them, you can share that joy. And it'll make it much easier to share that complaint, that critical feedback. Because see, complaining's way okay. It's okay to complain. What's not okay is to exclusively complain. Does that make sense? Find what you're grateful for and give it to them. Don't be embarrassed. Don't be fearful of vulnerability. Unload that courageous gratefulness on them as well. So there you've got the 8 things. This spring, sometime in 2018, sometime in March, take a walk down memory lane and just think back at all the awesome things that you have done together. Get back to checking in with each other on how you're doing if you're not. Have that companionship inventory. I dare you to walk up to your spouse and say, hey, can we just take 15 minutes and you just give me a report card on how I'm doing? Just go do that and see how that goes. Look for hidden resentments. Kind of clean that deep cleaning under the carpet for anything you've shoved under there and you are trying to just forget it instead of deal with it. And let's decide whether we bring it out and who we need to bring it out to. Because hidden resentments that are stuck there are going to float to the surface in a fight. Check your assumptions at the door. Don't bring your assumptions into a relationship. Ask questions. If you could just memorize anything you assume you know, just ask if you really know. I assume that look means you're angry with me. Instead of saying that, are you angry with me? Create happy memories going forward. Put enough time into your relationship. Don't do a 38-minute date because you're so busy. Do a 5-hour date because you focus and you love each other and you'll give each other your time and you'll sacrifice other things for each other. I would much rather you disappoint me than your spouse. If you're supposed to meet with me and you've got a 5-hour date plan, dump me, not your spouse. Does that make sense? And then find at least 5 things. The real suggestion is 19 to 1. But at least, bare minimum, 5 things to be grateful for every critical bit of feedback you give. This spring, see where you're at with that. Just take a quick gut check with your spouse, sit down with them, maybe take a 4-hour Saturday afternoon and just go through this together and really get deep, transparent with each other and talk about it. And we'll see how that goes. We're going to come back next week. And next week, what we want to talk about, by the way, this is Dr. Matt Eschler with a St. George Center for Couples and Families, formerly known as a Southern Utah Counseling Experience. Well, you can get hold of us at 435-688-1111. Give us a call throughout the week anytime you want. Someone will answer your call and set you up with a therapist or a coach that will help you with anything you need. Now, that doesn't mean each of our counselors is trained in 400 things, because you can't do 400 things well. We've got an expert in 2 or 3 things for just about everyone. So if you're struggling in your relationship, give me a call, 688-1111. If you're struggling with your mood, give me a call, 688-1111. If you have a problem with your teens, give us a call at 688-1111. We'll help you out. Dr. Matt Eschler, and I'd love to have this opportunity to speak with you for an hour. Next week, we're going to talk about your intimate spending plan. Okay, ISP, intimate spending plan. Some people call it a budget. We call it an intimate spending plan because that's more fun to say. We'll talk about that next week. Until then, we will see you later.